Good morning. How are you this morning? It's a wonderful, wonderful day here in beautiful Brisbane, Australia. The heat dial seems to be turned down just a smidge and it's enough to be comfortable. How are you going in the Northern Hemisphere? It's freezing cold for you, like literally. Oh, I feel for you. We don't really do cold in Queensland, Australia, so it's hard to imagine just how cold it is for all of you there. It's been an incredible 24 hours. Good morning, Charlene. And for everyone who's new here, hit me up and say g'day. And if you're here, do a hashtag replay if you're here for the replay. My name's Linda. I'm a trauma recovery consultant. And if you're here for the first time as well, remember to grab a note, paper and pen, because with complex PTSD, we actually have memory challenges. And so it's really good to be able to sit and go, that's a moment that really stuck out for me that I can really explore and do something around taking the next steps to incorporating it into my life, or taking it to your therapist or your trauma coach and going, right, how can we put some strategies in place around what I need to understand about this, where I need to go to from here, and sometimes where I need to understand what's happened for me emotionally as well. Because with complex PTSD, we're always carrying the trauma in our bodies, oftentimes where we've spent so much time on hypervigilance, that we're so wired for it that we don't need to actually keep pursuing the emotional content of what's happening for us. We need to first put in place really healthy structures, and especially at a brain level. Now, yesterday we talked about depression and how it takes time after we've been triggered. It's a different response to the trigger. Anxiety is often the easiest thing we recognise because we're having that instant physical reaction. I know for me, when I'd get triggered and have an anxiety attack, that my whole body would reverberate. So I'd be there going, oh crikey, I'm triggered. Obviously my brain's having a fear response. Perspiration pouring down me. You feel so out of whack within yourself. And the fear response is so intense that you feel like you can't talk, you can't walk, etc., etc. We all know what that's like. But as I said yesterday, I came to understand that we can be triggered and get triggered into the depression cycle without us even knowing it, becoming aware, until the downward spiral impacts our life so much that we go, what the heck's going on? This isn't me. This isn't who I am. And I found this especially true because over the last 2 weeks, I've been happy within myself. I'm happy. I know what's happening in my life, where I'm going, what I want to do. And then all of a sudden I realised over the space of 2 weeks that my brain and body had gone offline, and the impact was staying up later and later at night, not being able to go to sleep on time, which is something that normally I do happily. And I work this out at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, so it's like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And because our brain literally goes offline, and all our chemical response, we have no connection between the limbic system and the amygdala, or everything is disconnected in our brain. So we're offline, just like a computer goes offline and we can't use it. It's the same with our brain. When it goes offline, it's impossible for us to focus for any extended period of time, and strength of will doesn't cut it. I know, because I've got a really strong, determined strength of will to get things done. And I know that we cannot force our brain to go back online through sheer strength of will. It just doesn't work. Good morning, everyone. So, what do we do? Okay. We'll get today's infographic, and I will put this up down below so that if you miss any of the points that really stick out for you, you can go back. And one of the things I recommend too is, when it's up down below, take a screenshot of it so that you've always got a touch point to go back to and to refer to as well, from the perspective of it's like, oh yeah, that's what I remembered, that's how this applies to me in my life, because we'll all find that it applies differently to us, and that's why it's complex PTSD, because no one size fits all. Okay, so these are the things that I've found really, really super helpful, and the ways that I found them helpful to get my brain back online. So as soon as I realised that my brain had been triggered into the depression cycle, I went, what's going to make me feel good? So while you're sitting there today, think about something that you can do or experience that makes you feel really good. And if you've been in depression for an extended period of time, then it may take a little time for you to think, what would make me feel really good? And it's not about eating boxes of donuts, which we've all done to emotionally eat. This is talking about getting back to your core self, who I am, what makes me feel good, what's something that I could actually turn into a consistent habit that makes me feel good. Now, at the moment, for me, and I realise this is not an example for everyone because we're all at different stages, but for me, getting out of the house and doing one of two things makes me feel really good. Actually, there's a few things, but these are primary things that I can just do at the drop of a hat that can make me feel good. The first one is I go to the gym and sit on a bike for half an hour, and it does make me feel good, not just because of the chemical response, but because for me, it's getting out of the house, it's doing something that I actually enjoy doing, because I do it regularly enough that every day it sets me up for having a really feel-good day in my core self for who I am. So it's not just about the brain, okay? This is not just about going, oh, what can make me feel good? We want to know who I am and what makes me feel good, all right? Now, the other thing that I like to do is get out of the house and go and sit down at the water. We're close to the bay here, and we've got several places that we can go and sit at the water, and I journal. So it makes me feel good to get out of the house and sit there at the water, because there's always this beautiful bay breeze, and journal out what I can now recognise has been happening, okay? Now, the self-reflection is not about reflecting on our ego, which people seem to think, oh, if I look at my internal system and how I've got it how it's been organised due to the trauma, they think, oh, it's just ego. No. With complex PTSD, we have an external system that we've organised for the outside, everyone around us, and we have an internal system that we've got organised that helps keep us safe. And it's that internal system that we're looking at. What makes my internal system feel good? Okay? So everyone that's here, if you've got something that makes you feel good, just let me know. And Elizabeth said gardening makes her feel good. Oh, look, Elizabeth, I couldn't agree more in that I have a friend who has a large garden and she just loves it. Like, her Monday is spent gardening in order that it sets her up. She has a really high, intense job in order that it sets her up for the week and keeps her on track, okay? So I totally agree. But if at the moment staying inside and watching something funny makes you feel good, that's good too, okay? So do you, what makes you feel good for you. And look, it's highly possible that other people around you won't understand, all right? And that's okay too. You've got to get back to getting your brain online, so you've got to do something that makes you feel good. And if you've got kids, get them on board with, okay, mum needs to do this to feel good, let's do me, and then we can do something that makes you feel good. You can always communicate and negotiate. Oh, Josephine likes sewing and swimming and funny movies. Yes. Oh, look, I take my hat off to you. I find sewing very stressful just because of me and my internal system. But I am amazed at people that can sew. It's just like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And Elizabeth says swimming too. Yeah. Oh, and reminding her of the importance of getting out. Absolutely. And with the depression too, do you find that you lose track of time of how much you've stayed inside? Because I know I did that. And my bestie messaged me yesterday and said, oh, I'm going to the movies this afternoon, do you want to come? And I was like, well, I couldn't because I had a client, but I said, can we go later? And we did. So learning to negotiate and communicate is something that actually helps us as well. Because too often we keep it all internal, and in order that the outside can feel in control and safe. But I just think, you know what, I need to get out of the house again today. I had been out, but I need to go. I went, yeah, let's go. Let's go to the movies, okay? So if you're at the stage of recovery where you're comfortable doing something with somebody else, definitely just jump at the chance and go do it, because it makes you feel good, all right? Now, the reason this is important is because if we're feeling good from our core, it actually has an effect on our brain, and our brain starts to go, this feels good. Let's do more of this, okay? So we are literally retraining our brain to get used to feeling good as opposed to being triggered and having to go down the spiral, okay? And retraining our brain is so important. And then you'll notice after every one I've got then rest, okay? We are creating new neural pathways when we do this work. So we have got to acknowledge that not we as the core person needs rest, but our brain does. It needs us to just take a step back and go, okay, I've just done some work. All the cells in my brain, the pathways, everything is getting used to the fact that you feel good, right? Because as children, I can't tell you how many years that my jaw was clenched and I didn't know. My hands were like this and I didn't know. And my toes. And as I've gone through the process of recovery, I get to feel how tight a part of my body's been, and it gets to relax more. So we need to do this to retrain not just our brain but our body too, that we can relax more often than not. Okay, now order. Our prefrontal cortex, where our order is, where our ability to focus, all our fine motor skills. So even if you sat down and did colouring in, it's still going to bring, and you find it enjoyable, it's still going to bring you joy, and you're going to help you get your brain back online because you're using fine motor skills, okay? But order is something that is crucial to retrain our brain into using our prefrontal cortex, okay? Now, this is something that I found really, really fascinating, is people who've never experienced trauma, when something comes up that they've never experienced, their first thought is this is manageable. Our first response is a fear response, totally because that's how our brain was trained. Their response is, oh, this is manageable. Now that's because their prefrontal cortex is their main first response. Our first response is emotional, and so we have to be willing to retrain our brain into order. And can I say, as somebody who's creative, order can sometimes drive me nuts, okay? But in order to get our brain back online, we want to do something in the now that puts our day, just today, in order. So sit down and say, put a list. What do I want to achieve today? Okay, so the things that I have to do today, and especially if you're a mum and the kids have things that need to be done, okay, we want to put that all down and we need to write this out, okay? We need it out in front of us. It can't just be kept in our brain because we'll lose it all right? We want to retrain the brain how to think in an order. So as we've written everything out, then we want to go, right, I'm going to put a time, so what time I'm going to do this, and don't give it a time limit of, oh, right, I've only got 10 minutes for that. Don't do that. Give yourself an hour. If I've got to do the dishes, and especially if you're a mum, I'm going to give myself an hour, all right? But then what you want to do in order to help motivate you is go, right, at this time, this is when you use your strength of will, I'm going to get up and do this, okay? It is challenging, all right, because we're changing our whole internal system. But as we do the order, we're actually helping us re-access our prefrontal cortex so that we get trained more in order rather than going to the emotional, all right? We need to do this for ourselves. No one else can. Also, put a timer on for 2 hours, and you can use your phone. And look, when you're in the depressive state, okay, you've been triggered into depression, time is something that we can lose. So when you do your list, you want to put a timer on your phone for 2 hours, and then when that alarm goes off, you've got to stop. No matter what you're doing, you know, okay, if you're at the end of the dishes or washing or doing something with your kid, that's okay. But you know now that you have to stop because you've used up 2 hours of time and your brain needs to rest, okay? Now, the reason why you do this is so that you don't fall into going to sleep for hours on end and then can't sleep at night. So if you have a rest, have half an hour, whatever you can feel that your brain needs and your body needs, just rest, chill out, do something that's fun, okay? Everything will wait. Then, after you've had a rest, do another 2 hour stint. If you can't do the full 2 hours, then do an hour, have a rest. Do an hour, have a rest. But again, it's meant that we can, so that we can retrain our brain into an order, and using time helps us bring about that order as well. Okay? I actually did this yesterday because I needed to get my brain back online, and I did the 2 hour stint, had a rest, 2 hour stint, etc. And I actually had a couple of things happen that were unexpected yesterday, and I didn't get triggered once because I kept working with order. It helps us create inside of ourselves too a sense of security because we know what we're going to do today. Awesome! That's fantastic, Josephine. She's been doing that. Okay, and get your kids involved in time and order, because as you teach them, they actually come and teach you too. It's just beautiful. And it opens pathways of communications with them, okay? It's really good. My son kept coming to me and saying, Mum, why aren't you asleep? Or, you know, whatever, and I'd just grumble and say, go away. But it's good. Okay, he's older, he's not little, but I can guarantee if I was doing this when they were little, they would have been helpful, saying, Mum, is it rest time? Or Mum, do we do? And look, one of the most beneficial things I did when I was raising my kids was not to have a lot of chores for each other, but what we would do is say, this is the chores we've got to do now, who wants to do them? Or if it was something, we'd all get in and do it at the same time. And it really felt like we created community in our own home, that we do things together, okay? So they know that we get in and do things together, and it creates a cohesiveness between all of you. So then you're not left feeling that you have to do it all alone, and you're communicating what needs to happen, okay? Yeah, and as they've grown up now, and it's been really, really a really good thing to do, because we all know we get in and do things together, and it just lightens all the pressure from our brain too. And this is one thing I want you to do, write down replacing fear with management. So each time We have to develop an awareness of when the fear response kicks in. I look back and I could see when the fear response kicked in, I just didn't realise that it affected my brain. So if we have a moment where the fear kicks in, we've got to understand it's not us, it's our brain responding to what it perceives as a threat, okay? It's automatic, it's primitive, and it is from the primitive part of our brain. Our brain wants to keep us safe. So we've got to go, oh, I can feel that fear, and it's not feel the fear and do it anyway, because that's ignoring it. I want to sit down and I want to look at why I'm afraid and put in steps so that I can reaffirm mentally that this is manageable and this is how I'm going to manage it. So if I looked back over the 2 weeks and I went, okay, so a fear really struck me in the heart of, oh my goodness, I can see certain things ending in my life. But I went, okay, no worries. I also know what's coming, but I really needed to sit down and write out how I was addressing what's coming. I needed to reinforce it within myself. It can't just stay at the thought level. We've got to make it more a cognitive function within us, okay? And rest. Did I mention rest today? Look, and I say this knowing how hard it is. Get sugar out of your diet. Your brain will thank you. I reached a point in my recovery where I had done absolutely everything to help recover my brain's function. And, you know, I was at gym up to 5 times a week, etc. And I couldn't move beyond, so I wasn't getting any more memory back. I wasn't able to see things as clearly as I do now, and so much more. And I took sugar out of my diet, literally. And for me, this is for me, everyone's different. I went on the ketogenic way of eating, which is high fat, low protein, 0 carbs just about. And I can tell you, I literally felt my brain coming back online, all right? And if you haven't watched a movie called The Magic Pill, watch it, and you will literally see it in other people's lives, how it works and how it does help our brain come back online. I don't normally talk about diet stuff or ways of eating or anything, but honestly, our brain needs fats, okay? Alright, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know, and we can talk more. But remember, it's teaching our internal system how to get back on track with order as well. Thanks for joining in today. It's been wonderful for you all to be here and share, and other people will watch it, and all your suggestions will help them too to think of things, what makes them happy, what they can do. And I really like the idea of going for a swim too, Elizabeth. Okay, thanks girls. It's great to see you again today, and I'll be back tomorrow and we'll talk a bit more about this, but not about how to get back online, about how we do some care in advance before the trigger happens. So we build how we build some resiliency into us in order that when we know the trigger happens, we can do things to get our brain back online as well. So some care. Brain care for us. Okay, thanks everyone. Oh, sorry, I can't. I'll just have a drink. Remember the most important thing: we're the turtles. We win the race every single time. There's no rush. We will win this race to reclaim our lives and do everything that we are meant to do in this life. Okay, I'll see you all tomorrow. Blessings and dreams, and bye for now.